Hi all, today I'll be doing a short lecture on Don Marquis' Why Abortion is Immoral, and there'll be a couple quiz questions at the end. All right, so here's Don Marquis, still working, I think at the University of Kansas. So Marquis starts off dealing with some typical abortion arguments from both sides, and he's going to show that there are problems with both of the arguments, that they both beg really important questions by leaving out key controversial premises. So the typical anti-abortion argument goes like this: human life is present from the moment of conception. They might support that by talking about the genetic code of the fetus or by the appearance of the fetus, although it only starts looking human-like a little bit later on. But they'll go from that premise that human life is present from the moment of conception to, therefore, abortion is murder. And Marquis points out that this argument leaves out a very key and, interestingly, very controversial premise. So the premise that's needed for this, look down here at C. The premise that's missing, that needs to go between premise 1 and the conclusion 2 here, is it is always wrong to take a human life. So then if we insert that premise, it looks like human life is present from the moment of conception. It is always wrong to take a human life. Therefore, abortion is murder, where murder means immoral killing, right? Unjust killing. So what's wrong with this premise, that it's always wrong to take a human life? Well, if we think about it even briefly, there are examples, counterexamples to this principle. So times when it is okay to take a human life uncontroversially. If we wanted to go the controversial route, we could talk about euthanasia, we could talk about war, we could talk about the trolley problems. In all of those cases, people have argued that it's permissible to kill a human being. So those killings might not count as murder. But you could go even less controversial than that and say in self-defense, it's permissible to take a human life. So there's a non-controversial case where it's permissible to take a human life. So then we have to wonder, then we have to think, this argument won't get to its conclusion, because just because the fetus is a human, that won't make abortion murder. We still have to wonder, is this killing of a human, assuming that it is a human, is it an example of a permissible killing or an impermissible killing? Because now we have examples of both. I mean, there are plenty of examples of impermissible killings of humans, and there are also plenty of examples of permissible killings of humans. So this anti-abortion argument won't get to its conclusion. But the typical pro-choice arguments don't fare much better. So the typical pro-choice arguments go like this: a fetus is not a person from the moment of conception. So here, person is a technical term. So a person is something that has rights. We talked about this in the Thompson lecture. And somebody might say, in order to be a person, you have to be a rational being or a social being or have the ability to speak language. Fetus doesn't have those things yet. So somebody might say a fetus does not yet qualify as a person. So a fetus is not a person at the moment of conception. Therefore, abortion is not murder. So is not an impermissible killing. But just like the last argument, Marquis does a nice job of pointing out how this argument begs an important question. So it leaves out a key, possibly false premise. And that premise is, it is only wrong to take a person's life. So if we insert that premise, then it goes, a fetus is not a person from the moment of conception. It's only wrong to take a person's life. Or in other words, it's not wrong, it's never wrong to take a non-person's life. Therefore, abortion is not murder. So reading that back, a fetus is not a person from the moment of conception. It's never wrong to take a non-person's life. Therefore, abortion is not murder, is not an impermissible killing. And again, if we think even briefly, try to think about counterexamples to this principle, they immediately pop up. So when are circumstances in which it would not be okay to take a non-person's life? well, there are controversial cases of this. So we might think about whether it's ever okay to kill a non-human animal. We talked about that in our lecture on Engel. But non-controversially, if somebody's walking their dog down the street and you jump out of the bushes and chop it to death with an axe or something, that's clearly going to be uncontroversially wrong. So then we have very clear cases where killing a non-person would be okay. Imagine a bear's chasing after you and you're defending yourself, so you kill the bear to save your own life. That would be a case where killing a non-person would be permissible. And very clear cases where killing a non-person is not permissible. So in the case of killing somebody's pet. So then we have to wonder again, is killing the fetus, even though it's not a person, is it an example of an okay non-person killing, or is it an example of a not okay non-person killing? So both of these arguments, both of these common arguments about abortion beg really important and really interesting questions. And it's unfortunate that in the popular discussion, most conversations about abortion stop at claims about whether the fetus counts as a human being or a person, and then they jump immediately to the conclusion, skipping over really interesting discussions. So like Thompson, Marquis is going to jump past these common discussions. We might even say, although he doesn't make this move explicitly, he could make this move similar to Thompson. He could grant his opposition their key premise. He could say the fetus is not a person from the moment of conception, and he's still going to try to show why killing it would be wrong, even if it's not a person. We might even say, even if it's not a human yet. All right, so how's he going to do that? He's going to start with an analysis of why it's wrong to kill us. So why is it wrong to kill adult, rational human beings? And he considers some different candidates here. So the first is it brutalizes the killer. So if somebody kills me, then that makes them a brute, no better than a brute. They've somehow renounced their humanity if they kill an adult rational human person. But as Marquis points out, this is a consequence of doing a bad action. It doesn't explain why this act is bad. So it's not that them being a brute causes the action, it's that when they do it, they've become a brute in some sense. So another explanation of why it might be wrong to kill people like me or you is the loss that it might entail for other people. So if you kill me, then hopefully, my family would be hurt by it. Maybe a student or two would be upset about it, maybe. But there would certainly be some people, hopefully, some people around me that would be upset about my death. So maybe that's why killing me would be wrong. And I'm sure you have people like this who care about you, and that's why killing you would be wrong. But as Marquis points out, if this is the essential thing wrong with killing people, then it doesn't explain why killing a hermit, somebody with no human contacts, would be wrong. And we certainly have a very strong intuition that killing hermits would be wrong. So somebody without any human contact would still be just as bad as killing somebody with human contact. So the loss to other people isn't going to be the essential thing wrong with killing. So what he comes to, the answer that he comes to, is the answer that seems most intuitive. So the one that jives with our gut feeling about why it might be wrong to kill someone. And it's wrong to kill somebody because they're losing their life. So the loss of the victim's life for the victim, that you're cutting their life short. So as Marquis does a nice job explaining it, when you kill someone, you deprive them of the experiences, activities, projects, and enjoyments that would be in one's future had it not been cut short. So that's the really bad thing about killing somebody. He also notes that the change in biological state is relatively unimportant. It's not that I really value that my heart beats. I only value that my heart beats so that I can have the experiences, activities, and projects that will hopefully be in my future. So my interest isn't directly in my heart beating. My interest is in all of those things and the change in biological state. So I pass from living to dead. I don't mourn the fact that my heart beat. I mourn the fact that, or I would mourn the fact that my experiences, activities, and projects and enjoyments, I wouldn't get a chance to enjoy those, right? And people around me might similarly mourn them. So, killing takes away killing me would take away not just what I currently value, so things like reading philosophy, watching Warriors basketball, doing jujitsu, seeing my son grow up, but it also takes away what I might come to value. So if you killed me when I was 12, you'd take away things that I loved then, like playing basketball and playing video games and hanging out with my friends and stuff like that. But not only would you have taken away that, you'd take away that, but also what I would come to value. So this explains why killing we regard as such a bad crime. So this is why it's prima facie, so at first face, at first glance, why it's wrong to kill any adult. Now, there might be reasons which would justify it, but our first judgment should be it's wrong to kill an adult human being for these reasons. Maybe there are complicating factors that make it okay in a specific circumstance, but this is why at first glance it's wrong to kill any adult. The loss of the victim's life for the victim. So then Marquis goes into some support for this view and some implications of his view. So some support. This explains why we regard killing as one of the worst crimes. It deprives the victim of more than almost any other crime. So not only imagine you steal somebody's car, that deprives them of their mode of transportation, and that's a bad crime, but not nearly as bad as killing somebody, because not only are you taking away their ability from get from one spot to another, but you're taking away everything else from them. The future which they value, the things that they value now, and the things that they might come to value. It also fits with why people dying of terminal disease believe that their premature death is a bad thing, because it deprives them of their future. So this is more support for the view that the reason killing somebody is wrong is because it takes away the victim's future, which they value and they might come to value. All right, so some implications. Some kind of cool implications of Marquis' view is it leaves open the possibility that killing other species is seriously wrong. Recall that the other anti-abortion argument, the popular anti-abortion argument that he discussed in the beginning, it tried to get to the conclusion saying abortion is wrong by noting that with a premise that stated that the fetus was a human being. So the wrongness of the killing relied on the quality of the fetus being a human being. But Marquis' argument doesn't do that. It just talks about a future which something might come to value. So the wrongness of death here, the essential wrongness of death here, is that it takes away a future that something might come to value. And it could be that non-human animals have futures which they might value, or futures which they might come to value. So on Marquis' account, it's an open question still whether killing a non-human animal is wrong, whereas the wrongness, other arguments against the permissibility of abortion rely on the humanity of the fetus. It also leaves open the possibility that active euthanasia is not always wrong. If we go back to the arguments that he has in his crosshairs at the beginning, the typical anti-abortion arguments, they rely on the humanity of the fetus for claiming that killing it is wrong. And if it's always wrong to kill a human being, well, then maybe active euthanasia would also be wrong, or at least at first face, prima facie wrong. And there might be some special circumstances that might make it okay. But on Marquis' view, it could be acceptable and prima facie acceptable. If somebody says they don't value their future and they don't expect that they're going to come to value their future, then they on this view, they might give you permission to kill them, and it might be okay. So his view doesn't commit him to these the positions that other anti-abortion arguments commit people to, or at least more so. His view does entail that it is wrong to kill young children and infants, and this is an advantage that he says his view has over the pro-choice argument that he discussed in the beginning. So in the pro-choice argument, the typical pro-choice argument says a fetus is not a person. It's claiming that it's not rational, and rationality is a necessary quality for a person to have. But as we've discussed when we talked about non-human animals, it's not just fetuses that are not rational, but also infants aren't rational up to at least 1.5, maybe later. So, so if you argue against abortion by saying, if you argue for a pro-choice position by saying that the fetus is not yet rational, so it's okay to kill it because it's not yet a person, well, then it seems you're also committed to saying that killing infants is okay up to a certain age, which seems a view that people would not want to accept. So that would be a problem that they'd have to solve with the view. All right, so we have support for his view, some implications. Now he's going to deal with some objections to his view. But first, let's get to the argument. So his argument is this. It is wrong to kill anything that has a valuable future like ours because it robs that thing of its future. A fetus has a valuable future like ours. Therefore, killing a fetus is wrong, at least as wrong as killing an adult. So it seems that the view that Marquis comes to here is like an equivalence view. It's wrong to kill an adult. It's at least as wrong to kill a fetus. So I have a question here. Does this argument lead to the conclusion that all abortions are immoral? Well, I think the key to that would be premise 2. Does the fetus really have a valuable future like ours? What's entailed by a valuable future like ours? And to answer which abortions would be permissible, which would not be permissible on Marquis' view, I think we have to think about when would it be okay to kill an adult human being? Well, only in very extreme circumstances, right? When possibly if they were in a coma, never going to come out again, and didn't have any thoughts going on, maybe that would be permissible to pull the plug on an adult. And I think on Marquis' view, there might be some abortions are permissible, but they would be along those lines. It could also be permissible a mother having a potential mother having an abortion to save their own life, but I leave that open. That might be something that we talk about in the discussion. On Marquis' view, is it permissible to take the fetus's life if the continued pregnancy threatens the mother? It might be permissible, but I'll leave that open for discussion. All right, so now he considers some objections to his view. So the objections are going to be to his view about the essential wrongness of killing somebody, because his analysis of why abortion is wrong relies on his view that the essential wrongness of killing lies in taking the future, preventing the future of a being which might have a valuable future. So he considers some different candidates for the wrongness of killing, or not some different candidates. Here he considers some possible necessary conditions for the taking away of the future to be wrong. So he says, first, in order for a future to be valuable for a being, that being has to currently value it. And somebody might say the fetus doesn't yet value its future, so taking away its future wouldn't be wrong yet. But Marquis notes, if this was the case, then if somebody said they were extremely depressed and at that moment they didn't see why they should go on living or value their future, well, if a being has to value their future for it to be wrong to take it away from them, then it would be okay to kill somebody who admitted that they were depressed. And that doesn't seem right. So it doesn't seem to be the case that in order for taking away a being's future to be wrong, they have to be currently valuing their future. That is not a necessary condition. So another objection, maybe having the capacity to value a life is a necessary condition for having a right to it. So the fetus, this objection would go, does not even have the capacity to value its life. While the depressed person, they have the capacity to value their life, they're just not currently valuing it. So it would be okay to take away the fetus's life, but not okay to take away the depressed person's life. But then Marquis notes, what about someone in a coma? Does he or she not have the right to his or her life and medical procedures which might allow he or she to him or her to regain consciousness? So imagine somebody in a coma, they don't currently have the capacity to value their life, but a procedure might bring back this capacity. Well, on this view, it would be okay to run into the ward and stab them with a knife, right? And the person might use the defense, well, they didn't even at the moment have the capacity to value their life. It doesn't matter that they will have the capacity, they didn't currently have the capacity. But that doesn't seem right either. So it seems like in order for killing a being to be wrong, it neither has to currently be valuing its life, nor does it even have to have the capacity to value its life, as long as it might have the potential to value its life in the future, then the killing of it would be wrong on Marquis' view. All right, and then this is the final objection that Marquis goes over. He's done a nice job of dispensing with some objections to his view along the way, but this one's tricky. So, does this position entail that contraception is immoral? Here's why we might worry about that. It claims that something is wrong, that you are doing something wrong if you deny a being a future that it might come to value, especially a valuable human future. Now, why might that be a problem? That would be a problem because it seems clear that contraception is permissible. So how is he going to get around this problem? If his view entails that contraception is not permissible, then, and especially if it entailed that contraception was as wrong as killing an adult human being, then he has gone way off the deep end, and we should reject his view, or at least start to think really hard about where he went wrong. Even though we should anyways, it might be especially important if his view has gone so counterintuitive, right? So Marquis, in his defense, argues that nothing is denied a human future by contraception. And I'm going to read what he says here. So he says, but this analysis, his analysis, does not entail that contraception is wrong. Of course, contraception prevents the actualization of a possible future of value. Hence, it follows from the claim that futures of value should be maximized, that contraception is prima facie immoral. This obligation to maximize futures of value does not exist, however. Furthermore, nothing in the ethics of killing in this paper entails that it does. The ethics of killing in this essay would entail that contraception is wrong only if something were denied a human future of value by contraception. Nothing at all is denied such a future by contraception, however. So here he's just denying that his view leads to contraception being wrong. Let's see how his argument goes. So candidates for a subject of harm by contraception fall into 4 categories. 1, some sperm or other. 2, some ovum or other. 3, a sperm and an ovum separately. And 4, a sperm and ovum together. Assigning the harm to some sperm is utterly arbitrary, for no reason can be given for making a sperm the subject of harm rather than an ovum. The same with the ovum. It'd be arbitrary to say the ovum and not the sperm. One might attempt to avoid these problems by insisting that contraception deprives both the sperm and ovum separately of a valuable future like ours. On this alternative, too many futures are lost. Contraception was supposed to be wrong because it deprived us of one future of value, not 2. The sperm and the egg. And finally, he gets to the view that the case that we were worried about. One might attempt to avoid this problem by holding that contraception deprives the combination of sperm and ovum of a valuable future like ours. Of course, that was what we were worried about. And here's his defense against that. Here he says, but the definite article misleads. So the definite article being the, right? So he says, one might attempt to avoid this problem by holding that contraception deprives the combination of sperm and ovum a valuable future like ours. And he says the definite article, so the combination, the, misleads. At the time of contraception, there are hundreds of millions of sperm, one released ovum, and millions of possible combinations of all these. There is no actual combination at all. Is the subject of the loss to be a merely possible combination? Which one? This alternative does not yield an actual subject of harm either. Accordingly, the immorality of contraception is not entitled by the loss of a future like ours argument simply because there's no non-arbitrarily identifiable subject of the loss in the case of contraception. Now here I might want to push back a little bit. I'm not sure why we need to identify it in practice to determine that and even I don't know why we would need to determine whether the act was wrong, just that it had it very possibly could be wrong, very possibly as wrong on Marquis' view as aborting a fetus or as killing an adult human being. Because when he asks which one, what I would want to say is the one that had contraceptive methods not been used would have the combination that would have combined to form a person. Now, we don't know whether one would have, but let's say one would have had contraception not been used, then it seems that that action on Marquis' view would prevent a future of value. Which future of value? The one that would have been there, the one that would have been realized had contraception not been used. But this is why I worry about this, about his answer to this objection. I'm not sure he's totally answered this objection, but maybe this could be a discussion question too. Has he adequately answered this objection that his view entails that contraception is wrong? Or I don't think that he adequately has, but I'll leave it up to you in the discussion to discuss. All right. So now we get to some quiz questions. First, according to Marquis, what is wrong with the standard anti-abortion argument? So recall we talked about that at the beginning. A, it requires a false, unstated premise that killing a human is always wrong. B, even if all the premises were true, they would not lead to the conclusion. C, the conclusion just feels wrong. What's the problem with the standard anti-abortion argument on his view? Second quiz question, according to Marquis, why should we not think that his position entails that using contraception is impermissible? So how does he defend himself against this claim? A, the use of contraception is obviously permissible. B, the use of most contraceptive methods does not rob any identifiable individual of a future of value. Or C, the use of contraception can prevent unwanted pregnancies. Which of these strategies does Marquis use to defend himself against the claim that using contraception is impermissible on his view? All right, so that's it for the Marquis argument. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.